Hello everyone, my name is Aarti and you're watching HW News. In the age of everything digital, privacy is a luxury, and as India moves towards a digitized governance, concerns have been raised time and again over the lack of privacy laws in India. On Monday, the government introduced the Criminal Procedure Identification Bill 2022 in the Lok Sabha, which has further escalated the fears of surveillance state. The bill, among other things, seeks to provide legal sanction to the police to take physical and biological samples of those who have been convicted, arrested, or detained, including impressions of fingerprints, palm prints, footprints, photos, iris and retina scans, analysis of physical and biological samples, and behavioral attributes including signature and handwriting. While the opposition has termed the bill as unconstitutional, the government maintains that the bill is a part of the effort to upgrade the crime solving technology and bring it in line with the global standards. The bill makes it mandatory for certain individuals convicted and accused of offences to share their biological personal data. Now, one of the contentious provision in the bill is use of force in case of refusal. This means that the bill empowers the police or prison officers to take measurement of any person who resists or refuses to give measurements, and such a refusal will also be deemed to be an offence under section 186 of the Indian Penal Code as per the bill. Now, several privacy activists have termed this bill as another step in the direction of surveillance state. But let us go in a little detail. What are the other provisions of the bill and what are the concerns surrounding it? Let us understand in this video today. We are joined by Srinivas Kodali. He is a researcher working on data, governance and internet. So, Srinivas, as a privacy activist, what is your understanding of this bill? Basically, because the government has been saying that it is just replacing the 102-year-old law, which only allows to take fingerprints and footprints of the accused. But now they want to incorporate modern technology in the investigation process.
See, the criminal procedure identification bill is about criminal profiling, right? So, but to identify criminals in a host of population, you also need to be aware of the rest of the population who is not a criminal, right? Only then you can distinguish someone is a criminal and not. So, what the government has been doing since the Bombay attacks is that you've been building a host of surveillance databases. There's CCTNS, there's National Facial Recognition System, there's National Fingerprint Identification System, there's Economic Offenders Registry, there's Sexual Offenders Registry, there's a host of surveillance databases, criminal profiling databases that the Ministry of Home Affairs has been building. The problem with the current bill is that it doesn't regulate any of these systems. There are no safeguards. As a society, when we are talking about privacy and when the rest of the world is trying to limit the usage of facial recognition, this bill essentially giving too much power to the police to do whatever they want and trying to say that the surveillance infrastructure is actually legal is problematic.
Right. So, one other aspect in this bill is the bill seeks to take measurements of not only the convicted but also the other persons. So, there is this lack of clarity on who are those other persons. What exactly, the kind of effect it will have when it comes to, if at all this bill becomes an act.
Okay, so the other persons is pretty much everyone, right? Like, except the bill says we will only subject or we will only ask someone measurements part of any official investigation. Except we have seen in Hyderabad and Delhi and rest of other places, wherever, like including Chennai, wherever there is the use of facial recognition, the cops have been stopping people on the streets and asking them their measurements, right? So others is pretty much everyone, and which is what is concerning about this bill, that the bill doesn't limit itself to prisoners. It is pretty much about every criminal and potential criminal. So what's happening right now is everyone is a potential criminal unless you take their measurements and verify they are not a criminal. So we're coming to that stage.
So, when we say that they will take measurements, I'm saying the government has been talking about how it will, enable them to increase the conviction rate. But when you look at it in terms of the political prisoners, what exactly, threat are we looking at?
See, technology always adds volume, right? So it will increase conviction rates. I'm not going to say it in a negative way, but the problem is that it is also giving too much power to the police, right? And in a country like India, where the police never really follows the law, when you are being subjected to police harassment, it is increasingly it will increasingly become hard for people to question police or question power and question authority. So, to give an example, let's say there are a group of people who are protesting on the street for some new law that is going to come, and the police here are with facial recognition systems are going to record that entire protest. And once the protest is over, they are going to identify everyone who has protested at that site and arrest every single one of them, right? So the kind of power that you are going to give to the police is going to have far-reaching effects on free speech and dissent, and especially people who criticize the government and who could become potential political prisoners in future.
Also, the fact that this bill says that the data will be stored with NCRB and it will be stored for the year of 75 years. That's a long period of time. I mean, if the government is going to store the data for 75 years, and that too, the government has been saying that they will allow the persons to withdraw their consent. But eventually, when you talk about 75 years of storing a data, that's a long, long period of time.
Yes, so the point about NCRB is interesting because when they keep saying NCRB, what happens right now is in an undigital world, when in a paper world, all the FIRs, all the charge sheets, everything is at the police station. But what happened after Bombay attacks was that we started digitizing them. We started interlinking police infrastructure, and everybody at NHA through NCRB has access to pretty much every case details. This one can say is helpful because now police can find out interstate gangs and if there are cases registered against them in different states, which is actually a good thing. But the problem is that if you are storing this information for 75 years, for say, of everyone, right, and not of convicted criminals only, where a judge orders it. What happens is that anyone who has been potentially accused of a crime will stay in the database, and there will be a criminal profile of him. And whenever there is a crime in say in that potential neighborhood, he will become the primary suspect, right? Like what still happens right now is that whenever there is a dacoity, whenever there is a case of a certain kind, the police goes and catches ex-criminals who are known to do those things. What you are doing now with digitization is you are institutionalizing a lot of your own systemic biases, which are also casteist in nature, with your historic habitual offenders cases.
Also, one of the aspect of this storing data for 75 years is not only the right to privacy but right to be forgotten, which is still in a very nascent stage in India. When you look at it from that perspective, how does it affect the right to be forgotten?
Let's take few examples, right? It's just not say you've been accused of a crime that you did not commit, but you were an accused. And because you are an accused, all newspapers, all media, and including the police records, note your details. Now, you will be eventually cleared of your crime, but what happens after that? Will everybody start retracting that you were not a criminal? Like in case of media, we at least know that because they follow up on stories, they will say, okay, this guy is not a criminal. But when it becomes part of these criminal databases and it remains for this period of time, you are going to be subjected to certain set of further policing, further investigation in future further harassment, I would say. So, right to be forgotten is something that is still nascent. We haven't evolved it. And even if we did, I'm not sure how that will be put in public records, especially court records and records in criminal justice system. We can't randomly erase names in cases of crimes and accused and whatnot. Most of this information is public and it's public for a reason. So I'm not sure if the right to be forgotten is something that will be directly applied to all the scenarios. But yes, certain specific scenarios definitely of say civil crimes, not of criminal cases, but domestic issues wherever because this law is not just about murderers, right? It's also about all petty offences. If you get caught smoking on a street, which is a public offence, your information is collected, your photos are collected. It actually happens in Hyderabad every day. Like people just call me that, oh, I've been photographed by the Hyderabad police for smoking. Well, smoking is a public offence, but the question here is, what is the Hyderabad police doing after they take photographs, right? Like, sure, I'll pay my fine. Then you're saying if you are a habitual offender where you're continuously doing this, then what? Like in cases of petty offences, often the first petty offence is ignored when you just pay a challan of 500 and whatnot and you're let go. But there are certain provisions for some of the petty offences where you could be jailed for 3 months and 6 months, right? So when you keep doing this repeatedly, there is an increased chance that you could be ending up in a jail term, right? So the issue is criminal profiling and how it's going to affect a lot of people. It's going to affect a lot of marginalized who are already affected by our police system and its unfair practices.
Well, what is the legal standing of this bill? Because the opposition in the parliament has repeatedly said that this bill is unconstitutional, and the parliament actually has no right to legislate over these aspects.
Okay, so does the parliament has no power to bring in a law to regulate facial recognition? I would say no. But what I would say is the current form of the bill is very problematic. It's not that the parliament does not have the powers to bring bills. It's just that the parliament can't, for example, take away citizens' fundamental rights, except when they are following a basic set of prescribed tests that the Supreme Court recommends. In this case, because it's a fundamental right to privacy, you have the proportionality test, and all of the provisions of this law needs to be adhering to the proportionality test. And I don't think they do, because you would see that it needs to be, there is a law, there will be a law, but is the law essentially ensuring basic rights are protected? I don't think this version of it does that. But what we need to be doing, though, is that the parliamentarians need to be debating about it, debating as a society whether certain forms of technology, including facial recognition, DNA data, if they are collected, what sort of protections, what sort of measures need to be given in the bill. If you look at Europe and US, they have been heavily regulating facial recognition. They don't want facial recognition to be used in policing. They want policing to remain old school for a while. If India is saying that we are going to adopt facial recognition system, then at least then you need to give us some accountability measures.
Well, my last question would be, with this bill, is the surveillance threat, the state surveillance threat, is more real? Because last time also they brought Aadhaar bill, and the privacy concerns were raised around it also. But that was with respect to the storing of data for the purpose of, direct benefit transfer, etc. This time they are talking about, getting fingerprints, footprints, and other measurements, iris scan, etc., for the purpose of identification of criminals.
What we need to understand is laws and bills come after the infrastructure is built. In case of Aadhaar, too, only after a significant population of Indians were given Aadhaar, the bill came. Even here, we already have all these surveillance infrastructures. CCTNS is actually active. A lot of police already use facial recognition systems. It's not like this is going to be new. But what the law is going to do is the law is giving the policeman who is going to conduct these checks a free hand. Right now, if a policeman is using facial recognition on me, I can file a complaint on him. I can still take it to court and say that I've been subjected, I've been mistreated, right? And whatever the court says, there can be some redressal mechanisms in place. But right now, the law essentially says you can't go to court over this. If a cop orders you to submit for taking measurements, you have to comply, and if you don't, then you essentially get arrested or detained for a while. You don't know what's going to happen. It will depend on case by cases, but the provisions which say that you can't go to a court over this law and you can't do a bunch of these things, those are problematic. Laws essentially always are about exemptions and are about accountability, right? Right now, there is no accountability and complete exemptions for the police to whatever what they want, and that needs to change. The infrastructure already exists. If you bring a stringent law, then the cops need to essentially practice that law, so they will have to make changes in their surveillance infrastructure. But yes, we already have the surveillance ready. It's not like it's going to come after this law is brought in. That's not how India does things. We just do things and then whenever someone goes to court, oh yes, we didn't bring a law, so let's just get one. There's an active case. I believe there's a public interest litigation in Hyderabad High Court challenging facial recognition systems. So the MHA, I believe, thought, okay, 10 years after Bombay attacks, we started building this, we might have get a law. We're getting one.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for all this information, Srinivas. Nice talking to you.
Yeah. Thank you.